Good morning, Navigate. That is much better. Well, welcome to day 2 of our adventure together. I'm glad that you all have come back for more time to worship together as we fix our eyes upon Jesus. So yesterday we set sail together on this adventure that we call Navigate. We explored ways of being innovative and effective while still keeping our eyes focused on Jesus. Today, we turn our attention to traveling with others. Being a leader is a difficult task, right? It requires humility, boldness, grace, focus, and so much more. And so as we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus like a lighthouse on the horizon, who in our lives helps us stay grounded, who keeps us focused and honest. Leading people to Jesus requires us to remain connected, both to Jesus and to others. We need the crew that surrounds us to be there to help us stay our course. Are you building a crew of people who are not afraid to hold you accountable to living as faithful followers of Jesus, and who also love you through the most difficult tasks of leadership?
Marge?
Oh, sorry to bother you.
I'm not praying. Don't get the wrong idea.
Oh, they're not done yet.
And I don't shoot messengers.
I'm just getting them some refreshments.
I'm sure this is so hard on them.
It is, Greg.
I told you, I'm not praying.
No, I heard you.
Marge, write this down, okay? Take out a pen, take out paper. I want you to document this because somewhere down the line, somebody's going to know what happened to number 18 at St. John's, right? And it's going to go like this. This is exactly how it's going to go. It was the waning hours of his pastorate at the regal St. John's that was founded just 12 years after the birth of the nation. Pastor Greg Bencolio sat in the sanctuary, and he did not pray because he was dead right.
Do you want me to tell you what they're talking about?
Oh, no. Make them do that, right? That should be their job. Take the bitter with the sweet, like my grandmother always said.
You're assuming that they're going to ask you to leave.
But that's not even the point. It's that it got here to the chair and then the whole committee of PPRC. I need something to do.
Well, go do something in your office.
But they won't let me. Give me something off of your list, okay? Come on. Yeah, Marge, you tell me what to do. It'll be like a little bit of revenge.
Listen, you're not making it any easier for people to parent, Greg. Mrs. Baxter is furious.
Now the Baxters are on their side. Is anyone surprised that Mrs. Baxter is upset now? I mean, Mrs. Baxter holds on to this church like she holds on to her faded, chipped, gray Ford Probe with no springs. I mean, Mrs. Baxter would rather lie down and die on a musty, moldy, falling apart couch than have anything to do with meaningful or useful change. Someone needs to remind the Baxters that the whole point of having furniture is to sit on it. It has a purpose.
She's not the only one who's upset.
But do any of them have a legitimate argument? Right? Haven't I accomplished anything in my 4 years here? I am not interested in leading and pastoring a dead congregation. You know as well, Mechanicsburg, Camp Hill, all the 12 surrounding towns and suburbs, and everybody is spiritually dying inside. And the leaders of this church, all they're interested in are a couple of words that I said.
Well, some of the teenagers heard the words that you said, and I don't know, now they think it's okay to swear.
It was Marge, it was a private conversation.
Yeah, with 9 people?
But it wasn't in front of the church, and it was with fellow journeyers, fellow Christians, friends. I thought they were my friends.
You always represent this church, Greg. You know that.
But truth, Marge, right? We need to speak the truth for spiritual growth and maturity to happen. And here at St. John's, what do they want? They want niceness. Hey, let's do a new vision campaign, Marge. That's a better vision statement for what's going on here. St. John's Church of Niceness. Amazing niceness. How nice the sound. Let's sing that on Sunday.
They were strong words.
For strong feelings. Sometimes the truth is ugly. You know what? I feel like Jesus in the temple, and I don't know what to throw over first. Their lack of vision or the fact that they're so entrenched in this pride of being just 12 years younger than this great nation.
Righteous indignation.
Yes.
That's what you called it last year when you taught about the book of John. You said that Jesus had a righteous indignation.
Exactly.
I remember that. I actually think about it a lot, especially with all the stuff that's been going on with my son at school.
Come on, Marge. Stuff? Stuff is not the best word to convey what was going on between the teacher and your son, James.
You're right. It isn't.
Truth, Marge. We need to speak the truth and relay what's going on inside of us.
Okay. Truth? I think there's a difference between what Jesus went through in the temples and what you're going through.
Okay.
Well, you said it. The definition of righteous indignation is when God is not being lifted up. But I don't think that's what this is. I think that you're upset because you're not being lifted up.
I see.
I hear you talk all the time about everything you've accomplished here these 4 years and how effective you've been. And I agree with you. It is really important to speak the truth. Mm-hmm. And there's people in this church who are stuck in safe church mode. Yeah. And they're never going to like change. They're never going to want to change, even if it's for the right reasons. But I just...
Go ahead.
You think this is about God being honored, but I don't know, it has more to do with you being recognized. Greg, not once in the last 5 minutes did you even mention all the stuff, anything that God's been doing here. I'm sorry.
No, nope. I asked for the truth, Marge. Keep going.
There are times where you speak the truth with such wisdom and beauty, and it makes me cry. Like, you make me cry. But then there are times where, I don't know, you're so preoccupied with your goals that your self-righteousness shows. But I want to be around the first Greg. I love being around that Greg because that Greg is so much like Jesus. There's good and love and righteousness, and I feel like I can hope. But then the second Greg comes out. And I don't even know if I want to be a part of this church. I don't know if I want to be a part of the team that puts a gold star on his chest every week. I don't know. I think that when Jesus was in the temple, he wasn't worried about the impression he was giving. I think maybe that's why you're not praying. Maybe you know there's something that God needs to tell you, but you don't want to hear it.
2 Gregs?
You asked. I feel like you need to be right. But that's not the same as righteous indignation. There's a different word for that. do love you, Greg.
At least the first Greg.
Yeah.
Hold on, Marge. You still didn't give me something to do.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Give me the worst thing on your list.
Well, I have a lot of people that I have to call.
Oh, really? Come on. The worst, the absolute worst thing on your list.
Okay. I was going to go clean the bathrooms by the gym. George is off this week.
Okay, get the stuff.
No, I can do it this afternoon.
Nope, I asked. Go ahead, Marge. Get the stuff.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Marge, thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Cady. I'm from Rochester, New York, where I serve Asbury First United Methodist Church. And I just want to say I'm really honored to be asked to come down and preach today. The scripture lesson that I chose is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth. But as salt has lost its taste, it is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand, so that it may give light to the entire house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. The word of God for the people of God. Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. The point of salt is to be salty. We are the salt of the earth. The point of light is to shine. We are the light of the world. The point of life is to love. Are we alive? Jane was a traveler. And as happens to travelers from time to time, one day Jane found herself in a new city, the city of everywhere. Perhaps you've been there. Jane had not, but being a traveler, she was open to new experiences. Plus, the city of everywhere was beautiful. The streets were clean. The people were so friendly. The architecture was so appealing. There was just one thing that as Jane walked down the street, she thought was a little off. You see, no one, not a single person she passed, was wearing shoes. Strange, Jane thought, as she ducked into the coffee shop. And as she waited for her iced latte, skim, Her curiosity got the better of her as she was looking around at all the shoeless people, and finally, as the manager was passing by, she says, "Excuse me, manager. Oh, this is my first time in your city. I must say it's lovely. The streets are so clean. The people are so friendly. The architecture is so appealing. I just have one quick question for you. Why doesn't anyone wear shoes?" The manager looked at her with a knowing smile and said, "Ah, that's the question. Why don't we?" Right, said Jane, like that's what I'm asking. Why don't you wear shoes? Don't you all believe in shoes? Believe in shoes, said the manager. Of course we believe in shoes. It's the first article of our creed, shoe wearing. Oh, think of the sores, the scabs, the stubs, all prevented by those wonder of wonders, shoes. Jane, a little freaked out, slowly backed out of the coffee shop with her iced latte, skim, of course. And as she was walking down the street, she was in such a state of consternation that she almost missed the beautiful building right in front of her. It had stones that went up to the sky, a spire that went all the way up, and colorful glass windows with little pictures in them all around. And as she stared at this building, an old man sidled up to her and said, "Beautiful, isn't it?" "Yes," said Jane. "What is it?" "Ah," said the man, "this is our pride and joy. This is our shoe manufacturing establishment." "You mean you make shoes in there?" said Jane. No, said the man, "don't be silly. No, this is where we talk about making shoes. We have an entire staff of people that we pay to speak to us each week about the joys of shoe wearing. We sing about it, and sometimes those speeches are so meaningful, so moving that we weep, and we walk out in the week ahead committed to wearing shoes." Jane looked down at the man's feet and then back up at him and said, "You mean you go here?" "Every week," said the man. "I would never miss." "Well then, why don't you wear any shoes?" "Ah," said the man, "that's the question. Why don't I?" Before she could ask any more questions, she noticed just over the man's shoulder a small shop, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. It said cobbler on it. She excused herself to the old man and she ran across the street, and she saw the sign said open, but there was not a single soul in there. But she interrupted the cobbler as he was putting the finishing touches on a beautiful pair of shoes. There were plenty of shoes around, and she asked the cobbler, "Excuse me, why isn't there a run on your shop? No one in this town is wearing any shoes." And the cobbler said, "Well, miss, you see, everybody in this town, they just want to talk about wearing shoes. Nobody actually wears them." Just then, Jane had an idea. She put down her credit card and she bought as many pairs of shoes as she could carry. She grabbed them, she ran across the street, and sure enough, there was the old man still standing there in front of that beautiful shoe manufacturing establishment. She ran up to the man and threw the shoes down on the ground, and she said, "Good news, I have shoes for you. I bought every shape and size and style. Certainly there's a pair that will fit you in there." The old man looked down at the shoes and then back up at Jane and then back down at the shoes and then back up at Jane. He said, "Miss, I'm sorry, it's just not done." Jane said, "Why don't you wear any shoes?" said the man. "That's the question. Why don't we?" And as Jane traveled back from the city of everywhere to here, that question rang in her mind. Why don't we? Why don't we? Why don't we? Jesus was standing on a hill giving the sermon of his life before he would give his life as the sermon. He began poetically, perhaps you know this part, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, and so on and so forth. And then according to Matthew, he got to the meat of the sermon, or at least the seasoning. He said, you are the salt of the earth. If we're honest, it's sort of a weird thing to say. You are the salt of the earth, but we recognize what he was doing, right? Here he was pausing at the very beginning of his ministry, in the middle of his sermon, to remind those who were gathered around them of who they were. You are the salt of the earth. To be clear, he wasn't speaking literally. He was not saying you are sodium chloride. That's not typically how the Bible works. He was speaking theologically, existentially. He was saying to his disciples, Matthew was saying to his readers, the Spirit perhaps is saying to us that we are people of worth. Not because of the things we do, but because of who we are. And if we're honest, we could use the reminder from time to time, can't we? After all, we live in a world that from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to bed tries to convince us otherwise, tries to tell us that our worth comes from the things we do, from the people we know, from the positions that we find ourselves in. But the truth is, we're more than our Twitter followers. We're more than our Facebook friends, our Instagram likes. We're more than our jobs, our money, the pulpits that we preach in. We are more than the people in our pews, more than the committees that we have led. We are the salt of the earth. We matter not because of the things we do, but because of who we are. And just in case no one has ever told you, you are, as I am, a child of God. All of us, young and old, black and white, gay and straight, male and female, rich and poor, broken and whole, each and every one of us is a child of the living God. We are the salt of the earth. But that, of course, is just the first step. Once we recognize who we are, then we have to, live like it matters. Jesus says, if salt has lost its taste, it is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. We know the feeling, don't we? In those moments when we've tried to tie our worth to those more fleeting things of life, money, sex, position, it doesn't take long before it feels like the world is walking all over us. Maybe some of us are there this morning. Being a leader, it doesn't take long before somebody tramples upon you. The good news is that even then, we still have worth. You see, salt was not only a preservative and a form of currency, hence something being worth its salt. It was also a leveling agent for the most common fuel for outdoor fires at the time, which of course was manure. Salt was added to manure patties to help them burn longer, hotter, and more evenly, so that in the end, those solid charred remains would then be thrown out into the road to help absorb the mud. Do you hear? They were literally trampled upon and still had worth. So that should make us feel better, right? We are like the solid, burned, charred remains of manure patties. Maybe not, but think for a moment about what it would mean to be the leveling agents for this world. To be the people who not only preserve the message that Jesus came to share, to not just talk about loving, but the people who spread that message more evenly to all, so that it made the path a little easier for those who come after. Or said another way, friends, what would it mean if we wore the shoes we talk so much about? If we're honest, Christians have not done this particularly well. And United Methodists in particular have failed. When was the last time we were known for our love? We've become so obsessed with the way people love that we've forgotten to do it ourselves. Been so conscious of these 6 obscure verses of Scripture that we've forgotten the warning that 4 entire Gospels and a Savior give us of what happens when we choose law over love. And we have lost an entire generation of young people because of the way we have treated our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. They are looking for a church where people will wear the shoes they talk so much about, and if they don't find a church, they will look for something else. We have something to offer. We are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, what is it good for? And if that metaphor doesn't work for you, Jesus switches right in the middle of the sermon. That happens to us sometimes. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand that it may give light to the entire house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. The point of light is to shine. So in case you've missed the point of the entire sermon, here it is. We are not a people who get together to talk about light. We shine it. We're not a people who get together to talk about shoes. We wear them. Or to drop the metaphor for a moment, we're not a people who talk about life, we live it. And the only way to do it is through love. I give you a new command that you love one another. For too long, we've made our faith about what happens when we die, but the opposite is true. Our faith is about what happens when we live, not at death, but right now. And the only way to life, as shown by Jesus Christ, is through love. If you want the gospel in 4 words, it is this: love leads to life. That's it. What in this world is worth dying for? Isn't it worth living for as well? Howard Thurman used to say, don't ask yourself what this world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go and do that, because what this world needs is people who have come alive. And if it feels like too much to change the world, friends, how about we start with the part we have some control over? Ourselves. If we can make the relationships around us a little more loving, if we can practice forgiveness and kindness and grace, do you hear me, United Methodists? If we can practice some grace, if we can... If we can make a little kingdom of God here, then there just might be hope for those cities of everywhere. But if, my fellow sojourners, on our travels through life, we look in the mirror and we discover that we have not been loving as we should, then we owe it to ourselves to ask that hard question: why don't we? Why don't we? Why don't we? Friends, it's time to put on our shoes. Amen.
Children, many, many children. Everywhere I look, children. I gave birth to 19 children. Yeah, I'm a little busy. I think 2 of my sons, John and Charles, may become church leaders. But I am diligent in how I raise my children. Each one of them matters. My husband tends to get distracted from his duties at home. In fact, he's not home very much. And even though he's a minister, he can't very well lead the children spiritually if he's not here. But I am here. And I can lead my children spiritually. I run a pretty tight ship, no pun intended. I have strict routines and expectations for all of my children, and I am determined that they will all receive a good education and proper training in the scriptures. Whenever my husband is away for long periods of time, I provide the children with a worship service on Sunday afternoons. Sometimes other folks from the neighborhood join us too. Life has been hard. We lost 9 of our beautiful children while they were still babies. Our house burned down twice. And Samuel, well, my husband, he's a story all in himself. And it's hard to lead anyone, including your own children, with all of that going on. But I have known such joy in my faith. But your life circumstances can tend to knock you off course, if you know what I mean. Sometimes I think about the great leaders in the Bible, like Peter, impetuous Peter. What kept Peter on course as a church leader? Because somehow every church leader must figure out how to fix his or her eyes on Jesus. Here's how I do it. The children all know when they see me like this is like a do not disturb sign. This is where I go to talk to my Creator and fix my eyes on Jesus. It's the most important thing I do in leading my children. I fix my eyes on Jesus.
Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. So we sing that again. And turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.
God, we give you thanks for the powerful word that has been brought this morning by Stephen. God, we sense you moving among us this morning. We ask that you would continue to wake us up, that we would not only hear you, but that would move us into action, that it would move us out into the streets of our communities, that every person that we encounter might know your love because of us, and even in spite of us. Continue to speak to us this day as we uncover what it means to lead people to you. In your name we pray. Amen. As we move now into our plenary session, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Kenda Creasy Dean, who is an ordained United Methodist pastor and the Mary D. Sinnott Professor of Youth, Church, and Culture at Princeton Theological Seminary. She directs Princeton's Young Adult Innovation Hub, which helps churches find new ways to build relationships and nurture the spiritual lives of 20-somethings. And she advises the Log College Project, an initiative that helps churches move youth ministry beyond youth groups. Kenda is the author of numerous publications on faith, innovation, and young people, including Almost Christian and The God-Bearing Life with Ron Foster. She has 2 books coming out this year, Under the Dragon Scales, Restoring Joy to Youth Ministry, and Consensus and Conflict, Practical Theology for Congregations. A graduate of Miami University and Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., Kenda served as a pastor and campus minister before earning her doctorate at Princeton Theological Seminary in 1997. She's a co-founder and permissionary of Ministry Incubators, a consulting group to help Christian leaders, churches, schools, and judicatories create cultures of innovation. Kenda was blessed by incredible youth leaders and camp counselors as a teenager who believed God was at work in her long before there was really any evidence. And she's spent 40 years trying to pay that forward. In the off hours, Kenda and her husband Kevin love binge watching Netflix, digging their toes in the sand of Ocean Grove, New Jersey, and hanging out with their grown children and their grand animals. Would you join me in welcoming Kenda Creasy Dean?
Okay, so I feel like we should just all go home now. You know, we've just done church, and everything else is, in the details, I guess. So it really is, it's just a surprising treat to be here. There's old friends and new friends, and to be able to, Ryan and I used to go to church together, and you know who our pastor was? Stephen Katie. So I didn't realize Stephen was preaching until a few days ago, and so this is kind of like old home week. Anyway, if you feel a need to be with Jesus instead of at this plenary, see, I'm befuddled now because of all this. You just go do that. So let's pray. Gracious God, just take over here. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So, in 1909, I know you were thinking about this morning. In 1909, the American Blacksmiths Union was experiencing a dip in their membership. So they sent out this appeal to everybody who was a blacksmith, and they said, hey, everybody recruit one blacksmith to join the union because we need more members, got to be able to take care of the needs of our transportation industry. So it worked. A year later, the membership in the Blacksmiths Union spiked a little bit. But within 10 years, the blacksmith's trade was dead. How come? Because of this. The year before, Henry Ford had rolled out the Model T. Now, obviously, they still needed leaders in the transportation industry. It's just that transportation was changing, And so the kind of leaders they needed had to change with it. Now, I teach in a seminary, and so I am deeply invested in preparing young leaders for the church. And I think that it's possible that right now, seminaries, maybe denominations, are preparing better blacksmiths than at any time in our history. Now, the problem, of course, is that ministry is changing. The church is changing, so the leadership that we need has to change with that. By now, most of you have had a moment like this. This is a clip from a really old movie that you've probably seen 100 times, Apollo 13. What I want you to do is to just look at this scene and think, how is this like my church? Go.
Gene, we have a situation brewing with the carbon dioxide.
We had a CO2 filter problem on the lunar module,
5 filters on the limb.
which were meant for 2 guys for a day and a half. So I told the doc,
You're already up to 8 on the gauges. Anything over 15 and you get impaired judgment, blackouts, the beginnings of brain asphyxia.
What about the scrubbers on the command module?
They take square cartridges.
The ones on the limb are round.
Tell me this isn't a government operation.
This just isn't a contingency we've remotely looked at.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic.
Well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole. Rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. People upstairs handed us this one, and we gotta come through. We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
Better get some coffee going, too.
Why don't you turn to the person you're sitting beside and just talk for a second? Anything here remind you of your church? Go. All right, I'm going to invite us back together. And we'll have more time to talk today, but so by now, most of us have had one of those Houston, we have a problem moments in our churches, right? Where we've realized that the oxygen that once gave life to this church that we love has been draining out. And we don't have anything lying around that can fix it. I mean, General Conference. We worry we're never going to get a pastor like that other one. We don't have any young adults we can recruit. The youth group, what happened to the youth group? So we're in this season of denominational hacking, right? We're learning to use familiar things in new ways. We're trying to think about the church in ways we haven't thought about it before. And every now and then we work out a temporary solution that's kind of creative. And if you've ever done that, you have done Christian social innovation. Now, the question before us right now, and listen, as United Methodists, this question is before us in a really pointed way right now. But this is the question before us. How much of the church as we know it are we willing to give up in order to follow Jesus? Now, to be clear, I actually think this is the very best time to be in ministry. I actually think that, I know it sometimes feels like things are falling apart, but I think it's the best chance we've had to be the church in 500 years. All this lamenting that the church is dying, look, death and resurrection, that's our story, you know? We might just discover as we are going towards this tomb that when we get there, the stone's been rolled away, right? And listen, that stone wasn't rolled away for Jesus' sake. Jesus walked through walls all the time as the resurrected Christ. That stone was rolled away so that the women, so that you and I could see what God was up to. I think that's the moment we might be in. Most of us grew up in an old economy church in a new economy world. We'll unpack that in a minute. But what that means is we're trying to figure out how to make a square peg fit in a round hole using nothing but the parts we've got. Christian social innovation, sometimes called entrepreneurship, has been around for centuries. Or you've either done it or you've read about it. Has anybody read Tattoos on the Heart by Gregory Boyle? That is a book that'll change your life. Take it to the beach. Anyway, he's a priest. He's a priest who's worked with gang members in LA for 30 years. And he realized early on, what these guys need isn't prison, they need a job. But nobody would hire them because they were tattooed from stem to stern. And so he's like, okay, well, I guess I'll create a cafe so they can get a job. I'll hire them. And that's how he created Homeboy Industries, which has been the model for the way we now approach gang rehabilitation. Becca Stevens, she's an Episcopal priest in Nashville. Her congregation is about the size of the restrooms out there. It's tiny. And they decided that they wanted to help women who were coming out of prostitution. But of course, ministry requires money to do stuff like this. And so they looked around and they were in the middle of all these fields. And so they started Thistle Farms, bath and beauty products. They're now available nationwide. That not only generates money for the ministry, but it also gives the people job experience, and it funds the Magdalene House, which is where people who are coming out of sex trafficking live while they are getting back on their feet. If you really want to get a sense of the entrepreneurial spirit behind Christian social innovation, meet Maggie Baron-Kitze. She founded Maison Shalom in Burundi right after their genocide. I'm just going to let the video speak for itself. Watch.
She calls it Maison Shalom. It's here in the Burundian village of Ruwigi that Maggie Baron-Kitze has transformed the lives of 30,000 orphans. Maggie has rejected Burundi's past of ethnic hatred, poverty, and genocide. Instead, she's writing a new story. She's created a place where children can be raised in a vision of love and God's abundance. Maison Shalom now includes a farm, hospital, movie theater, swimming pool, and mechanics shop, among other businesses.
We Christian, our duty, it's not to go every day in the church and praying, and then it's to give back the dignity to the human person, because all the project is surrounding this human person. Yes, we can give clothes, we can feed the person, but if he has no dignity, it's not.
It began at the start of Burundi's civil war. Maggie, an ethnic Tutsi, was working as a secretary at the Catholic bishop's house in Ruwigi. She had adopted 7 children, 4 Hutus and 3 Tutsis. In October 1993, Tutsi assailants attacked the compound. Maggie was stripped naked and tied up. 72 Hutus were killed before her eyes, including priests and nuns. One was her best friend, Juliet.
My friend Juliet looked at me and said, please, educate my children, Lydia and Lisette, like your own children. Give them the love, but I prefer to die with my husband. And then they cut the head and they give me.
Maggie's 7 adopted children survived, and she managed to save another 25 children as well. But she didn't stop there. This horrific experience was the start of Maggie's calling, not just to save children, but to proclaim the gospel message of love by raising a new generation without the hatred and bitterness she already saw growing in their eyes.
Every day, I improvise new life because love makes us inventor.
Maggie insists that the people of Burundi can live full, rich lives. This includes entertainment, such as watching movies and swimming.
When they ask me, you want to make a cinema in Ruwigi where there is a war and they will destroy everything? And why a cinema and a swimming pool? And I said, why you must always give us clothes and so we can dream like you.
Maison Shalom now comprises many businesses, including a mechanics school, a tailor's shop, and a hair salon.
You see, to dream also. Not only to, you can sit and they will cut your.
All are part of the vision. The enterprises generate income and make Maison Shalom sustainable, but they also carry a powerful theological message. The swimming pool isn't just a place for the children to have fun. It's a symbol of the waters of baptism built on a killing field.
And then where I have found many bodies, because I am Christian, I said I will put a swimming pool in, because of the water of our baptized, clean all the sin.
There's an area for celebrating and feasting. In the midst of so much death, this space speaks to the hope of resurrection.
We never die, really, because we go, our mission on here is finished. We continue another because we are created for eternity. My dream is to build all over the world Shalom House, to say we are only one family. And it's my dream, like John Lennon in his song, Imagine. This is life.
Now, before we go any further, let me offer a caution. Lots of churches are starting to jump on the Christian social innovation bandwagon right now because it's kind of trendy to have a big idea. Or maybe we think it'll generate some revenue. Or maybe it'll attract some young people. Here's the truth. Big ideas will not save the church. Only Jesus Christ saves the church. You might try Christian social innovation for a whole lot of reasons, but at the end of the day, only one of them matters. And that is because love made us inventors. Do it for love or don't do it. We're going to have to define some terms because truthfully, innovation is the wrong word for what we're up to. What we are looking for, the word we're looking for is love, right? In other words, all of these words, innovation, entrepreneur, hacking, all of this stuff, these are just trendy ways of saying we've got to find a better way to love each other. We've got to stop trying to reach people and start trying to befriend them. And we've been so bad at this as a church that our words are not going to carry a lot of weight unless people can see the church love in some new ways. So the words don't quite get at what we're at, but we're going to define some terms just so that we're on the same page. I'm using the words innovation, entrepreneur, the way English majors use them, not the way business majors use them, okay? Innova, Latin, it means in the new. But the most common word in Scripture for it is from the Greek, kainos, which means not exactly found like this before. There's a link between newness and innovation and entrepreneurship that is ancient. Entrepreneur comes from a couple French words that means literally an undertaking between. So an entrepreneur is somebody who creates something to fill the gap in between what's already there. So in Christian tradition, we mush all of these words together. In Revelation 21:5, God undertakes to fill the gaps in creation with kainos. Behold, God says, I'm making all things not found exactly like this before. Behold, I'm making all things new. So you see, it turns out that the story of God, the Bible, as it's been put together, both begins and ends with stories about God innovating. Now, when I say the new economy, I'm talking about a term that social economists use for a model of society in which our typical economic assumptions are kind of turned upside down. So instead of the normal assumptions about the economy built on scarcity and competition and profit, what the new economy says, especially if young people are talking about it, in the new economy, we assume abundance, not scarcity. We assume collaboration, not competition. We assume that we're creating value for people and for society. We're not just creating profit. And any Christian looks at that list and says, well, that sure smells like the kingdom of God, right? Why are economists talking about this instead of us? Why is the economists taking this to heart, but the church isn't talking about it? That's exactly what the late Gregory Deese, He was a Duke economist before he died. He coined the term social entrepreneurship, and that's what he wanted to know. What happened to the church in this conversation? Now, he was an atheist, but he understood that a social enterprise, a business where your success is measured on the impact you have, not on the profit that you make, he knew that that movement started in churches way back in the ancient world and in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, if you went to a school, it's because a bunch of monks started one. If you went to a hospital, it's because a bunch of Christians started it to glorify God. If there was a hospice in the community, it's because Christians were trying to provide hospitality, especially to people who were suffering. And eventually, these people would start a church and they'd invite a priest to come in and lead them because all the Christians that were doing these things needed a place to worship. In medieval towns, convents and monasteries were beehives of entrepreneurship. They created sustainable agricultural practices. They perfected consumer products like cheese. Munster cheese means monk's cheese. The Benedictines, a lot of people think it was Hildegard of Bingen, added hops to ale to make beer. They experimented with burning water. We would call that alcohol. A priest invented champagne. He said he found something that tasted like stars. And of course, they had communion wine and they sold the leftovers to help provide income for the monastery. Churches led the way in technological innovations. I don't know about your church. That's not the first thing I think of with my church. It's technological, leading the way in technology. But it was through the church that we have inventions like spectacles, like mechanical clocks, like blast furnaces and cast iron, like monks invented mills that were powered by the tides rather than human labor. They were trying to make life better for the peasants. In the Middle Ages, church leaders were often the only people who could read or write. And so any experimentation with education, including girls' education, with art, music, liturgy, spiritual practices, forms of governance started in the church. In fact, the civic orders of the Enlightenment were patterned on the way the monasteries were run. Even social mores stretched in the monastery. You might notice that the nun in this painting is pregnant. So what happened? Why do people today think that churches are where good ideas go to die, right? 3 years ago, there was a marketing firm in New York that asked teenagers, if you want to make a difference in the world, where are you going to go work? You know what the overwhelming answer was? You want to guess? You're close. Tom's Shoes, okay? Where you buy a pair of really expensive, cheap shoes, and then they take a pair to somebody else. That's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, Tom's Shoes was the runaway winner of that. Of course, the church wasn't anywhere on the list. But if you would have asked a medieval young person that question, if you want to change the world, what do you want to do? If you want to break social norms, if you want to live a creative life, especially if you're a woman, if you want to make a difference in the world, well, forget Tom's Shoes, you want to be at the church. So that's why Greg Deese wanted to know what happened to the church. Here's a quote from one of his articles. The field I am now associated with, social entrepreneurship, emerged in business schools in part because of a decline of interest from the church. So, if our church has kind of lost track of our roots in social innovation and entrepreneurship, why do young people care about it so much? We know, by the way, that 90% of millennials do not want to be called millennials, but they do want to be called entrepreneurs. Almost everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and the Kauffman Foundation has a lot. They always show a lot of statistics on this. They found that about over half of 18 to 30-year-olds say they want to start a social enterprise. About 1 in 4 already have. It sounds like a lot, but still that's not the majority. Why do young people want to do this? Well, we think it might be because, well, everybody's doing it. No, actually, all the kids are not doing it these days. They're thinking about it, but they're not actually doing it. It's more of a mindset than a practice. And millennials and Generation Z after them are really very risk averse. Millennials are in too much debt to take financial risks, mostly because of student loans. Generation Z grew up during the recession, so they're looking for stability, not financial risk. But they all love the idea of entrepreneurship. So what's happening is they're working with other people who are entrepreneurs. Turns out, if you're going to start something new, you know what the sweet age to do it is? Most people do it at age 40. Right? So anyway, the prediction is in about 10 or 15 years, we will have a very sophisticated workforce in terms of social innovation because these young people are all working for other people doing it right now. And interestingly, the people doing the most social innovation, it's lowest among whites. It's higher among other ethnic groups, but the highest proportion of people doing social innovation are immigrants. You're twice as likely to be a social entrepreneur as an immigrant than a native-born American. It's also not true that young people are doing this for the money. Sometimes our interest in social entrepreneurship or social innovation starts here. There are 3 reasons that we notice that churches tend to get involved in this conversation. One of those reasons is financial, but another reason is it's a creative outlet. A lot of young people view this as a way to express their creativity, and it's also a form of missional engagement with your community. If you're going to be involved in your community economically, you're going to know all sorts of people who would never darken the door of your church. But one of the things that's a key difference between the old economy church and the new economy church is this. In the old economy, first you did the fundraising, and then that supplied the money to do the ministry. Right? In the new economy, the fundraising is the ministry. They're baked in together. So, for example, I go to this little church, about 50 people. It's grown a little since you were there. And about 80% of them are in their 20s or early 30s. Not most, but many of them are graduate students. And what that means is they're socially aware, they are totally into the new economy, and they are flat broke. Right? So we never have any money as a church, but guess what? We're a church. We still have to do mission. You don't get off the hook doing mission just because you don't have any money. So we needed a vehicle for doing mission in our community that has 54,000 college students. And we are not actually located on a campus. We're about 3 miles away. So we took that word vehicle for ministry literally, and we bought a food truck. Anyway, the feed truck is what we creatively call it. It started as our way of doing campus ministry. The students couldn't come to us, but we could get to them. So notice that the feed truck is not a fundraiser that raises money to help us hang out with college students. The feed truck is the way we hang out with college students, right? The economic model and the ministry are baked in together. But if we dig a little deeper, we'll find 2 other reasons that Christian social innovation is really powerful for young people, and even why it should be powerful for the church. The first is a generational mindset. Young people, it's generational characteristic that has been noted and named by researchers. They want to do good. Researchers call this the new sincerity. Among 18 to 35-year-olds, irony is out, earnestness is in. If you want to test that, just try drinking coffee out of a styrofoam cup sometime, right? Mention climate change and see what happens. So the new sincerity makes young people, they're not snarky, they're not ironic, they're exhaustingly earnest, right? And if you really want to be authentic, you want to be a little awkward along with it. I have a friend who made greeter buttons. He made greeter buttons for his church, and what the greeters buttons say on them is, "We feel awkward, so you don't have to." So, anyway, what does the new sincerity look like? Well, in the middle class, it looks like excruciatingly intentional consumerism. The Washington Post followed a bunch of young adults to a farmer's market, and they were sort of eavesdropping on the kinds of questions they were asking. They were very impressed. They wanted to know about how the tomatoes were grown and what kind of organic fertilizer was put on them and how they were taken care of. What they didn't ask was what was the condition of the workers who grew them. It's easy to make fun of this excessive consumerist intentionality. So here's a little satire to show you what the new sincerity feels like. Watch.
You know, I feel like I grew up around firewood. I grew up around wood. I grew up around wood-burning stoves, fireplaces. I feel like it's kind of in my blood. My name's Jesse Horn, and I am the founder of Smoke and Flame Firewood Company, North America's only premium, handcrafted firewood manufacturer. I started Smoke and Flame in 2012 after growing frustrated by seeing poor quality firewood flooding the market. I wanted to bring craftsmanship back to firewood production. My criteria for sourcing logs is simple. I only source logs that'll give me the best firewood in the world. That's it. Each piece of firewood is unique. It has its own personality. It tells a story, which is something we definitely want to respect.
My name is Carl O'Brien, and I'm an apprentice here at Smoke and Flame Firewood. Working with Jesse he's an artist.
I will not sell a single piece of firewood until it is absolutely ready. And I don't care how long that takes. The way I look at it is I wanted to incorporate a lot of the stuff they did in the old world with a lot of new and modern technology. Combining those two worlds. Basically slowing down, putting in the time and craftsmanship into making a quality product. I consider myself a bit of a storyteller, but my words are wood. People just can't believe it's finally happening, you know? For so long, it's just been a pile of wood at a gas station. Now it's like, wow, someone's actually taking the care into the wood we're gonna burn. They love it. My name's Jesse Horn, and I make firewood.
Oh, man. You know, I've learned that I have to say that's a satire. I showed this to one group of people, and they thought it was for real, you know, like we are taking ourselves a little too seriously here. Now, there is actually a much more serious side to the new sincerity, and that is an excruciating truth-telling. There are some communities, of course, for this kind of consumerism to even be thought of would be obscene. But it's how we are the new sincerity is kind of the root cause behind things like Black Lives Matter, like the Me Too movement. So the truth of the matter is, what the new sincerity is doing is causing young people to take social change into their own hands because they don't trust American institutions to do it. They don't trust churches to do good. Who do they trust? They trust small business, as it turns out. The Kaufman report talks about millennial confidence in small business being extremely high. Americans actually have more confidence in small business to solve problems than any other institution except one, the military. Confidence in small business is the key to social change for young adults especially. 4 out of 5 think that the most trusted business to have a positive effect on society is small business, compared to slightly over half of nonprofits and churches. Now, we've got to be cautious here, right? Because this is a place we can fall through the ice. It's always easy to confuse our saviors, right? It's not, but if we posit Christian social innovation as the savior of the world or the savior of the church, that's not just, it's not noble, it's not even naive, it's heretical. It's also a very fast road to disappointment because there's no human enterprise, no matter how redemptive it is, that's up to the task of salvation. What Christian social innovation can do are many good things, but its job description is not to save the church. So there's another deeper reason why Christian social innovation is important to young people, which also reveals why it should be important to us. It's good that young people want to do good things, but that's not why the church should be invested in it. The primary reason the church should be invested in Christian social innovation is because it helps young people consider God as a possibility. If you have read anything by Charles Taylor, and if you have read his 600 pages called The Secular Age, congratulations. But anyway, he spends 600 pages trying to argue this. He says that all of us live in what he calls the immanent frame, and we're all stuck in this. And what the immanent frame means is just this, that we have flattened our reality to the point that we now can no longer imagine anything being real or true that is not part of our own experience. Our own horizon is as far as we can see. We can only extend the possibility of reality to our own fishbowl. And what that means is, we know from research, we now trust the opinions of people like us more than we trust the opinions of experts or academic research. So why do we trust people? Not because they know what they're doing, but because they're like us, right? So Taylor argues that we can't get out of this immanent frame. We're all kind of stuck in it, but sometimes there are cracks in the immanent frame. And that's how, as Leonard Cohen used to sing, the light gets in from outside. So here's why social innovation has so much power with young people and why it theologically matters to us. Young people sense that this immanent frame they're stuck in is too small. They know their horizons have them trapped somehow, but they don't know how to imagine what's beyond it. They know something is off. And the only way they know how to stretch their horizons is how to make the world not just about them, is to help heal the world in some way, right? So when they hear a story like Maggie Baron-Kitze's, when love makes you an inventor, it stretches the canvas across their immanent frames so tightly that they start to see that there might be something pressing in from beyond. There might be something real that is not just about them. There might be something real that's beyond their horizons, that they begin to make out a shape that might be on the other side. Maybe it's beauty, maybe it's love, maybe it's God. All they know is that when they love someone, they start to do things they never used to do when the world was just about them. Because when love makes us inventors, we are endlessly creative because we want that person we love to stop suffering. We'll take you to the moon and back if it'll restore joy to young people that we love. We'll build a maison shalom so that children will flourish. We'll build swimming pools on the killing fields. The only reason to do social innovation as a church is because, like Maggie Baron-Kitze, love makes us inventors. Not our love, Christ's love. And that's a love not even death can stop. So I think desperation is a spiritual gift. And right now, churches are more willing to experiment, to innovate, than even 10 years ago was thinkable. There are all sorts of books even about this. Paul Nixon is speaking here, and his book, Weird Church, is one that lists a bunch of these churches. There are all sorts, in the work that I do with ministry incubators, we work with conferences and we work with churches that are doing things like, there's one church that's trying to address racism among teenagers with a pie bakery. That was the kids' idea. There's youth ministry that's becoming job training for young people who would never come into the church. One of them's teaching them to fish in the Northwest. There are coffee shops that function as worshiping communities. There's campus ministries that become intentional housing communities. So we are on our way. Love is making us inventors, but 3 cautions before we start. 1, we're not called to have a great idea. We're called to have great love. Remember that among the Puritans in the 1600s, innovation was such a bad thing, you got your ears cut off if you were accused of it. Christian social innovation has consequences. It takes risks. In case we forget, Maison Shalom started not because of a great idea, it started because of a massacre, right? 2, it's a myth that the most successful innovators leave everything behind to pursue a moonshot. When I'm doing consulting, the first thing we always tell people is, look, if you've got a new ministry idea, don't quit your day job. Why? Because people who do that fail, right? The most successful innovators are people who procrastinate long enough to learn from others, who build their big ideas bit by bit. And they persist not because an idea is pushing them, but because the love of somebody who needs them not to quit. Here's what we can say with some assurance about Christian social innovation in churches. We are a long way from getting this right. The trick is we got to try things, even if we haven't worked out all the kinks. You've heard that 90% of first-time startups fail. That's true. But you know what? They fail after 10 years. How many ministries do you know that last 10 years, right? Successful or not. Plus, if 9 out of 10 first-time, this is a business stat that we need to translate into ministry here. 9 out of 10 first-time businesses fail. It's also true that 75% of second-time businesses succeed. But 3 out of 4 first-time business owners never try again. So when we see somebody with an audacious ministry, we read about a Catholic priest who creates jobs for gang members, or a Methodist church doing a food truck or a coffee shop, or a woman summoning unthinkable courage so that 30,000 war orphans can live. These are fallible, unpolished efforts, but they give us hope that, you know what, maybe we could try something too. 3, it's not true that social innovation throws out everything that's come before it. Only God starts with a blank slate. We all stand on the shoulders of somebody else. So our past is our future. We remember our future as Christians. There was one group of blacksmiths that survived the transition into the automobile economy. You know who they were? They were the blacksmiths who became mechanics. Most of America's first mechanics were former blacksmiths. Christian communities that make this transition to the new economy are going to do so by adding the next tools we need to discover God's movement in the world we're in, and I think that includes the tools for Christian social innovation. At the end of the day, actually, I think the church is more like a lobster than a blacksmith shop. Bear with me here. I was in Maine a few years ago talking to Methodist groups, and I'll tell you what, these people in Maine know their lobsters. So I learned a lot about lobsters. But if you want a written account of it, there's a book called The New Parish, which has a nice description of this as well. Or you can do what I did and spend a ridiculous amount of time on YouTube watching this. Anyway, theoretically, crustaceans, the lobsters are crustacean, they can live forever, right? But they have to do one thing. What do they have to do? They have to molt. They have to get rid of their shells. So here's how they do it, okay? The first thing they do is they take on all this extra water. They bloat, right? Because when they bloat, they swell up and it cracks that shell around them, right? So now it gets loose. And then, after they've bloated and cracked the shell, they have to turn themselves inside out, right? And so they take the claw, they come in through these little holes in the wrists, and then they pull in their little legs, and they have to actually turn their eyes inside out as well. You know, lobster eyes are out here, right? So they pull their eyes in, and this means that they're blind. They cannot see what's going on around them, all right? So now they've got themselves all turned inside out, right? And now is when they can take that powerful tail and whip off the old shell. And you would think that that's the end, but it's not, because now all you are underneath is soft and squishy lobsterness. And what that means is, if you're going to be eaten, now is the time. And remember, you're blind, right? Your eyes haven't adjusted to this new reality yet. You don't know what to do with this new body. And so you're really vulnerable. And it's really scary, I'm sure, for every lobster who can't see what's happening around them. All they can do is wait for this new shell to harden around them. I think that's the church. We are all, we are bloated. Our shell is cracked. And we are all at various stages of turning ourselves inside out. And we're blind. We can't see what's around. We don't know if we're going to survive this transition. We don't know what's out there that might devour us. All we can do is wait for God to take this new shell that we're being given and let it become part of who we are. Behold, God says, I am making all things new, not because God's an innovator, but because God is love. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenda. All right, so I have several announcements for you this morning. We will be moving from here into your crews that you put together yesterday. Unless your crew decided something different, please gather with your crew where you met yesterday. Be sure to gather with your crew so that you will get the fullest experience of Navigate. I got a couple of papers here, sorry. For those of you who are going to the baseball game this evening and you need a ride, you're looking to carpool, there is a place on the Yap app to post a request to coordinate that with others. The ballpark is not far from here. It's about 3 miles away for those of you who want to Uber or Lyft. Or walk. I don't know that I would recommend that, but you can give it a go if you'd like. The breakout sessions, the learning labs that will be in Governor A, which is over in the hotel, are as follows. Creating a discipleship pathway, small church checkup, churches, planting churches. So that's at 11:15, 1:30 and 3:30 respectively. All of the other learning labs are in this building, back in the lobby where most of you probably came in, down that hallway. So that way and that way. If you have questions, there are plenty of people around to help. So you may go now, meet with your crews, and learning labs begin at 11:15.